Hey guys, it's Megan from the DIY and lifestyle blog, megannicole.com, and today we're making a lavender wreath. So one of the many things I really like about this wreath is that it doesn't require much to make. All you're going to need is a sunburst wreath form, lavender stems, a pair of scissors, and your hot glue gun. That's it. Okay, so let's talk about the wreath form for a second. This style, the starburst style, is the reason why this wreath is such an easy wreath to make, because it's pretty much already made for you, you're just adding color to it. However, since it's made of real materials, it can be a bit messy to work with and it might require some cleaning up. So if there's any like leaves or little stems that are going the wrong way, go ahead and clean those up now. I also wanted to mention that I have this tutorial written out on my blog, so you can either go to the description box below and click on the direct link to this blog post, or you can go to megannicole.com and search for lavender wreath in my search bar and you can find it that way. There you will find a link to all the materials I used for this wreath, as well as more detail about this DIY. So just a heads up, this is just a minor detail, but I bought these lavender stems from Hobby Lobby. And if you go to your local Hobby Lobby or if you're searching online, they are not called lavender stems because I guess they're not actually technically lavender. They are purple cattail stems. Now if that bothers you, feel free to get actual lavender stems. Hobby Lobby carries them. And then I also have a link to some pretty ones from Amazon as well. But for the sake of this video, we are calling these lavender because I'm not a flower expert and they are close enough. So as you can see here, I'm prepping the stems by removing the leaves, which wasn't actually necessary, but we'll get to that in a moment. I don't always remove the leaves for my florals when I'm making wreaths, and you don't have to for this one either, but I personally wanted my lavender stems to blend in with the wreath form, and I didn't want the green leaves sticking out. So again, I'm stripping them here, but I realized later, and you'll notice here in a second, that I did not need to do that. However, prepping your floral stems before working them into your wreath is always good practice. So originally I thought the stems needed to be left long so I could work them into the wreath, but then I quickly realized, well, not so quickly, I realized later I only needed about 3 to 4 inches of the stem to work with. So do as I say and not as I do here by skipping the prep that you just saw and cutting the stems directly from the bush that they are connected to, and then removing the green floral tape. So as soon as you have enough lavender stems prepped to fill your wreath form, you can start attaching them to your wreath. So start by adding a long bead of hot glue to the stem of the lavender and then let it cool for about 10 seconds before attaching it to the wreath. The slightly cooled glue is stickier and also less likely to drip. So once your glue has cooled enough, go ahead and tuck the stem into the wreath. Hold it there for a few moments until the glue has completely hardened, and then you can move on to the next. You will repeat this step over and over until your wreath is as full as you want it. So you may notice I'm placing these stems in somewhat of a pattern. This is to reassure that my stems will be evenly placed no matter when I stop adding the lavender to the wreath. Another way you can make sure your wreath turns out evenly spaced is to get a good visual by laying the stems on top of the wreath first without gluing them. This is also a good way to make sure you are covering up any major blemishes or gaps in the wreath form. You can then remove the stems and start gluing, or snap a photo first to remember your placement. Another wreath tip I have, since you usually put a wreath together laying on a tabletop, is to make the arrangement and then lay it on the floor. So before you start gluing, lay the wreath and all of the materials on the floor, and then stand up above it to kind of get a better view of what your end result will look like. Then you can either snap a photo or start gluing everything down. I didn't do that for this wreath because it's pretty simple, but maybe for a wreath that's more complicated or requires more materials, I would do it for that. So like any DIY wreath, there's pros and cons. So the sunburst wreath form is one of my favorites because it is so full. It doesn't require much fluff or like florals to make it look complete. But because these wreath forms are made of actual natural materials, they can be a little bit messy to work with, so just keep that in mind when you're creating your wreath. Now let's talk about the lavender stems. So pro, they are perfect for this type of wreath form. Their long, skinny shape make them just made for this type of form. However, because they are so skinny, unlike a flower like a peony or a hydrangea, they don't take up as much room, which requires more of them. So when shopping for florals, you might want to snag something like this when it's on sale so you're not spending as much on your wreath. So now let's talk about the pros and cons of using hot glue. Hot gluing your stems to your wreath forms is probably the fastest way to attach florals to a wreath. However, I do not have this wreath hanging in direct sunlight. If you make this wreath and then hang it outside in the direct sun, I don't know how well the hot glue will hold up. You can always attach the lavender stems using floral wire, but that could take a while. So I would suggest risking it by hot gluing them to your wreath, and if they start melting off because you have it outside, either fix it using floral wire or just bring it inside and then just use it to decorate the inside of your home instead of the outside. So as you add your lavender stems to this wreath, you kind of want to work in 3 different layers. So the first layer is kind of your middle layer. So once that's full and you like the way it looks, start adding some stems on the outer part of the wreath. You won't add as many as you did in the middle, but just to kind of spread them out. And then once you're done with that, you can add a few to that kind of that center to where the lavender stems are kind of showing in the center of the wreath.
If you're needing more detail on this tutorial, I will link the corresponding blog post on my website, which includes a free wreath making guide you can download for more tips and tricks. There you can find many more wreaths that I've created tutorials for, and they are just as easy to make as this one. Now that I've been creating content for almost 2 years, I'm pretty sure I have a DIY wreath for every single season. So be sure to go check out the Wreath Corner on my website, megannicole.com. When finishing up any wreath, I like to take a step back and look at it from another angle, just like you see here. This makes it a lot easier for me to do any final touches, and also makes it a little bit more obvious if there's any unnatural gaps in the wreath. So I hope you found this wreath tutorial to be helpful, and I've also proven to you that wreath making doesn't have to be complicated. All you need is a hot glue gun, some pretty florals, and you are fully equipped to make a beautiful wreath. So that about does it for this tutorial. If you found it to be helpful, please like this video, and if you have any questions at all, leave me a comment below. Also, don't forget to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss more DIY, decorating, organization, and event planning content just like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you on the next video.